Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much really to everybody for the opportunity to be here today and to show actually the progress and activities that the Secretariat of the Union of the Mediterranean is indeed carrying out in order to support as much as possible the setting up of and development of a Mediterranean water agenda in the Mediterranean. Now, I took for me the permission, before going into the details of what the UFM is doing on water, to give in a certain way a presentation, introduction of what the UFM is. Let's remember that the UFM is, let's say, the new institutional framework decided by the 43 countries, so all the European countries and all the Mediterranean countries bordering the Mediterranean Sea, to have a common framework for operation, and for decision. The mission is indeed to enhance regional cooperation and integration in the Euro-Mediterranean region. That, of course, take place through different topics, different themes, and, of course, for the Mediterranean, water is a key one. As I mentioned, the Union for Mediterranean is basically inheriting the Barcelona process. Let's remember it started in 1995 when the dialogue between the European and Mediterranean countries were starting, and in a certain way that had a peak in 2008 when there was a specific summit in Paris when the countries, the 43 countries, decided indeed to establish the Union for Mediterranean. In 2010, the Secretariat, which is indeed the office I belong to, so the operational, let's say, arm of the UFM, was established, as it was mentioned by the presenter, here in Barcelona. So it's, let's say, 20 years of the Barcelona process, more or less right now, and 9 years since when the Secretariat was established here in Barcelona. Now, the mandate of the UFM is indeed, from one side, to be a platform for regional and policy dialogue, but also, let's say, a catalyzer for regional projects. So, to give an operational dimension to what the 43 countries all together decide to achieve. Now, the way all this takes place is through a series of common shared principles that the 43 agreed to stay by. So again, a strong political commitment. We have, as I will say in, let's say, a few minutes, regular meeting of all the ministries of foreign affairs of the 43 countries every 2 months. Adoption of the concept of co-ownership, so everybody is talking, negotiating on an equal foot. This is very important. Viable geometry, meaning that if there is an agreement on certain priorities, but not all the countries do feel ready to start to operate in that respect, a subgroup of countries can indeed kick off activities, and the others can indeed join later. Regional and sub-regional integration, which is, of course, particularly relevant as far as water is concerned, and we are talking about that in a few minutes. Dynamic and flexible partnership, which is not just an institutional partnership, it's a partnership which aims at bringing together many other actors from the private sectors, IFIs, academias. Indeed, the objective is to reinforce relations at all levels among the Mediterranean countries. Then concrete projects will go into that. And of course, the adaptation to the current regional context. The historical regional context is a particular complex one. So indeed, the flexibility and sort of dynamic relation is important to maintain. We were talking of the policy dialogue and the more operational part of the projects. Policy dialogue do happen through ministerial meetings and ministerial declaration. That means gatherings of the 43 ministers in charge of a specific team, and let's say through common declaration, which of course do not touch on all the priorities of that thematic area, but do touch on the agreements reached on the points of common interest. This is particularly important. Then, indeed, all these backstopped by a regular dialogue between all the representatives from the 43 countries, and then a series, let's say, of technical and working groups which do help to operationalize what the recommendations from ministers are and translate these into common initiative, common programs, and projects, let's say. When I refer here to label project, I do refer to a specific political endorsement by the 43 countries, but again, we'll go into that during the presentation. So this is to wrap up on what I was mentioning. So political process, ministerial meetings. Up to now, we had more than 20 sectorial meetings on the most, let's say, different thematics, from women to environment and climate change, to blue economy, to employment. Co-presidencies, I mean, the UFM, which is indeed different from the UFM Secretariat, which, as I said, is the operational arm, is led by two co-presidencies, one for the North, which is indeed represented by the European Union, and is a stable, let's say, co-presidency. On the other side, we have a Southern co-presidency, which goes on a rotating base, and at the moment stays with Jordan. We had the meeting of the senior officials, the representative of the 43 countries every 2-3 months, and again, the operational secretariat. In our secretariat, we do have a Secretary General from the South. It's Mr. Ambassador Fatalla Sijilmassi from Morocco. Then we have 6 Deputy Secretary Generals, 3 from the North and 3 from the South. The one actually leading currently my division, which is the division on environment and water, is Mr. Miguel García Herraiz from Spain. Then we have more or less 60 staff among diplomats, experts, financial experts as well, and program managers as I am. Now we go more into the subject of today, which is how all these links with water. So what's happening at the level of the Union for the Mediterranean as far as water is concerned. We all know the current challenges. Of course, I mean, the historical situation is particularly complex, but indeed it's very important to say that countries do see water as a priority field for cooperation. That has always taken place at technical level. There is a need to have such a cooperation, and even more in this historical phase. Not just for, let's say, the political situation in countries, but also for all, let's say, the environmental challenges that we are taking up. Of course, the one on climate change is among the priority list, and of course, all the negotiations in Morocco do tell a lot about it. Of course, the region, due to the challenge of climate change, is facing an enormous water scarcity. There are very important demographic changes. A lot of projections say that indeed the population along the coast of the Mediterranean is going to increase, putting even more pressure on the sea and on the water resources, accompanied, of course, by unemployment and environmental degradation that we are all together trying to face. As far as water is concerned, and we'll see how this is incorporated in the process that we are carrying out, of course, it requires effective policies and management, but an important look and consideration for all the different levels of it, so national, basin-wide, sub-regional, and so on. Indeed, the presentation of the next speaker is about a sub-regional process, the one that is being carried out by the 5+5, which is indeed feeding the work that we are also doing at regional level within the UFM. More or less, the answer is already there. Why a common regional framework and why acting together? The countries, all the Mediterranean countries, are indeed convinced, and this is, I mean, really the result of the very recent talks and developments, that there is a need to facilitate and support experience sharing, replicate best practice, and avoid the failures by lessons learned. Let's not forget that we had a ministerial in Jordan in 2008, but then, you know, the other ministerial of 2010 was not as successful. Again, there was a technical agreement, but not a political one. So we are in a phase when the countries are still pushing to scale up again the technical cooperation into a more political one. Promoting common approaches after adaptation to local needs. Of course, there are national priorities, but in most of the case, the national priorities do actually have similarities at regional level. Implementing joint action, implementing national projects with the regional impacts. There are indeed some projects, we'll see that when we'll go to that though are national, and actually very rarely the UFM focus on national projects, do have a regional impact and a regional relevance. The application of innovative practices, and just last but absolutely not least, and very importantly I would say, is the access to funding and donors. So where do we stand? Let's say within my division, the one on water and environment, we are working in 3 different main areas. One is indeed water, the other one is environment associated by the Mediterranean countries on climate change. And it's worth mentioning that the Ministerial on Water and Climate Change was the first one able to tackle the issue so broadly at Mediterranean level, including both climate change adaptation and mitigation, and then one on Ministerial on Blue Economy. I will leave it aside for the moment because this will open, let's say, other windows of much longer talks. And let's focus to the one on water. We do have, associated to the Ministerial on Water, a working group, so a technical working group. And what we are now moving towards is a potential ministerial on water in the first semester of 2017 during the Maltese presidency. Orientatively, tentatively, the date should be around April. So what is the process? As we said, we have a water expert group that was created in 2008 through a Euro-Mediterranean, let's say, water ministerial conference. It was even before that the Secretariat was created, which called for this reinforced cooperation. Of course, they suggest a common regional policy framework would aim to address the needs and opportunities across the Mediterranean and create an enabling environment for investment and development cooperation. The WEG, as it is, provides a platform for information sharing and promotion of common objectives. Again, what we were saying, we are trying to build through this group a common Mediterranean agenda. And most importantly, this WEG, which, let's say, usually meets on an annual basis, do gather all the water directors or high representatives of all the 43 UFM countries, European and Mediterranean. The WEG actually is enlarged to other stakeholders, and IME, for example, that is present here today with us, is regularly also taking part to it. Now, which are the recent developments of this water expert group? As we said, we had a Euro-Mediterranean, let's say, ministerial in 2008. There was a call for another ministerial in 2010, which didn't go to a good end for not technical disagreement, for political disagreement. So after some years of pause, which indeed were a phase also in a certain way of stall, countries called for the UFM to indeed relaunch this water expert group. So the water expert group took place in Luxembourg, and the countries reaffirmed the need to join forces, to join efforts to address water challenges. So within this process, because we are talking of a process, they also call for a political impulse, again, to water, through a ministerial meeting. Now, the ministerial meeting is going to be just a step of a bigger process, but indeed, of course, is going to be important because of the political relevance that comes with it. We are going into, let's say, the more operational setting. The water expert group decided to set up a smaller group for negotiations among countries. This was called the drafting group, which was tasked actually with the identification of the priority topics the Mediterranean countries could work on and let's say on shaping the potential, let's say, ministerial declaration that the future minister could agree upon. We are at the moment in the middle of this process. In fact, I say that there is a process in between, which is quite complex because involves a political dimension and a technical dimension, which I'm going to show in the next slides. And let's say the next meeting is now planned on the 20th of December in Brussels, indeed to finalize this work and step up to the political level. Here we are. So this is the process. In blue, you'll see the technical, let's say, gatherings. And in yellow, oranges, you will see the political step, because the two processes are indeed merging and crossing each other. So we started with the WEG in Luxembourg, when countries indeed agreed to have again to relaunch a common water agenda based on a roadmap and associated work plan. Then we had another working group meeting in April, when the countries expressed a positive consideration of a potential UFM ministerial meeting. Then there was a meeting of the representative of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of the 43 countries, which were presented this possibility of a ministerial. So they started to get acquainted to the process and prepared, let's say, a preliminary calendar to follow. Again, in July and in September, we had two more technical gatherings, which have defined, let's say, the modalities of operation of this potential collaboration. Again, another political endorsement. In fact, the UFM countries finally endorsed the process and the ministerial meeting to take place during the Maltese presidency in April 2017, and the rest is now ongoing. Next meeting is December, and from December to April, we will have the political framework, so the negotiation among the 43 countries of the ministerial declaration on water. Again, we are talking, and maybe I go back to what I was saying at the beginning, we are not talking of having a cooperation on everything. We are talking of having cooperation on the issues of common interest among the 43 countries. And this is important to retain. So, ministerial agreement. So it's the objective and opportunity of such ministerial could be, indeed, for the ministers responsible for water to stress again the key relevance of water in the Mediterranean region, which in fact goes by itself, renew the commitment to the water agenda, which didn't take place, in fact, in 2010, and that has created, of course, a problem also in terms of financing of the water issues in the Mediterranean. A guide on the contribution of the water agenda in responding to the key challenges that the region is now facing, and indeed create again a positive, conducive environment for private investment and map regional funding. The note, and it's not just a note, is indeed also saying that all these efforts are not just meant to serve sectorial policies, but indeed to serve cross-cutting policies, including, of course, food security, energy security, environmental protection, climate resilience, employment, and so on. So the declaration will try to serve, as far as water is concerned, also these other common objectives. So, joint decision during summer, and discussion more than decision, because no decision is taken yet, but this is indeed an important process also for the countries to get together. It's about the process, so the how, and the content on what we can agree. The merging elements are indeed a chapeau. This is, of course, for the water agenda, which, of course, recaps all the steps taken in the past that indeed summarize all the important, let's say, milestones of the Mediterranean cooperation, strategic guidance by the ministers, And then the definition, of course, aligned with all the recent developments, the Sustainable Development Goals are indeed an important international framework which the Mediterranean is indeed fully absorbing. Then the integration of priority fields and regional approaches. I would also like to underline, and maybe this is the point to do that all these processes do involve also ongoing sub-regional processes. Within the Mediterranean, we have a group which is called the Group of the 5+5, so all those countries belonging to the Western Mediterranean that have activated their own, let's say, cooperation. But this cooperation do fit into this larger regional process. Same happens for the Arab countries to the League of Arab States, and same happens for the Balkans. So all these, let's say, sub-regional processes are fully taken into consideration and are actually filling a common regional water agenda. And then we are looking, of course, at a mechanism how to do it. And of course, this water expert group is the group that would help to operationalize this common agenda. We are working indeed on a roadmap, on a work plan. So roadmap is something with long-term objectives, but we want to have also a rolling plan of work, possibly on a biannual level, and then, of course, a financial strategy. This is a key point for all the countries. So the merging points in terms of priority fields, again, nothing is decided. These are just emerging from all the series of meetings that we have been mentioning, are indeed the importance of tackling water governance, so the inclusion of issues related to gender, equity, diplomacy, water integrity, poverty, rights, and of course the promotion of transboundary cooperation, which is a key issue in the Mediterranean. Water financing, and this water financing, let's say water financing is important to take into consideration also new sources of financing. Let's talk of all the funds, for example, that have been put now on climate change. Of course, it's important to associate that to the water-related work. Water demand management, water and climate change adaptation, indeed, with mitigation adaptation benefits. An emerging issue, which now it's quite broadly discussed, is the water, energy, food ecosystem nexus. Water security and migration, as well as water quality protection and depollution. As far as, let's say, regional approaches, tools, and instruments are concerned, the emphasis is put on enhancing, let's say, financial opportunities, financing opportunities, again, through climate funds, migration funds, in addition to the already existing, let's say, water-related specific funds, engaging new partners, again, getting involved central and private banks, having meetings also with ministries of finance, do not just, let's say, leave the negotiation only to ministries of environment and water, but to expand to the ministries that, in fact, have a key role in planning and deciding about the financing of projects. Promote employment opportunities and green jobs, enhance transfer of technological solutions towards increased efficiency, and promote, indeed, information system, including an aligned reporting system for the water-related SDGs. At the UFM, we do have a water portfolio. Before, I was telling you that we do have a system by which the projects that come to us do get labelized. What does it mean that the project gets labelized? It means that we have a group of promoters, maybe a consortium, that do submit a project to the UFM Secretariat. The project can be fully financed, partially financed. Normally, we have already, let's say, a good basis of financing before it to be taken into consideration. The process is screened, and is screened also, let's say, internally checked with the countries, if the countries do think it's indeed important, relevant for all. And then it's, let's say, submitted and presented. So this is the project identification and assessment. Then once the project goes through all the, let's say, processing in-house, then it's submitted to the 43 countries for labeling. The project may concern just, let's say, a limited number of countries. It doesn't have to be the 43. But the important thing is that the 43 do agree to label that project. So even if the project concerns 5 countries, the 43 do say and confirm that that project is touching on a priority for all. And once the project is indeed politically endorsed and labeled, then the Secretariat, if there is a need, do help and facilitate the financing, let's say, of the missing component. About the initiatives, let's say, I just wanted to give you a very brief flash on what we have. We have, let's say, an important initiative, which is Horizon 2020 for a cleaner Mediterranean, which includes urban wastewater. For those that are more, let's say, familiar with the ongoing programming, the Mediterranean, we do link with, let's say, a new funded program, which is combining Horizon 2020 with SWIM, which is the Sustainable Water Integrated Management Program. I'm not gonna, let's say, give too many details on that because that would open another box, but of course I'm available for information. As a label project, we do have the desalination facility of the Gaza Strip. This is the typical, I would say, exception of a national project, which is, however, of regional relevance. So this project is indeed to create a desalination plan in the Gaza Strip and the associated, let's say, north-south carrier. We do have another program that was actually mentioned just during my presentation, which is the depollution of the Lake Bizerte. Is an industrial, let's say, depollution project, which of course an important component on water, and is indeed an integrated approach targeting the reduction of all kind of pollution around the Lake Bizerte in Tunisia. Again, this is a national project. It's important to say that this is part of the hotspots identified by UNEMAP, so the Barcelona Convention in the Mediterranean, and actually the Secretariat has helped and facilitated the missing, let's say, financing of this project, which is indeed supported by Tunisia itself, by the EIB and by the EBRD. Then we have another project on governance and financing. This relates more to PPP. Yes, I'm going to close in a few minutes. So on public-private partnership in the Mediterranean. All this information, of course, can be found on our website. Another project on water integrity, so we are talking more of agro-diplomacy. Another one, which actually the next speaker is going to focus on, so I'm not going to say too much about it, is a key project. There are already national, let's say, components that are being activated. We are still, let's say, fundraising for it, and we hope to associate it also to other let's say, EU-funded programs that have just kick-started, like the SACE, the Shared Environmental Information System. This one actually is more an environmental project, but relates to marine litter, and again, is tasked by the identification of hotspots of marine litter in the Mediterranean. I will close. Thank you very much, and I'm available for any other information should you need so. Thank you.